Hi, everyone. Welcome to Around the Ladder. I'm Erika Steinberg, and this is the podcast about career paths that don't follow the usual script. We've all heard about climbing the corporate ladder, but real careers zigzag, they stall, they take unexpected turns. If your journey hasn't been a straight climb, you're in the right place. I love the idea of going around the ladder and finding a path that fits who you really are. So, on this show, I get to speak with people who have taken unconventional routes, by choice or by chance, and they found success on their own terms. My guest today is Rose Moran, a marketing and business development veteran with more than 15 years of experience. In her current role as Chief Revenue Officer at ICVM Hawk, Rose helps law firms and professional service organizations elevate their marketing strategies. Previously, she held business development and strategic marketing. Led business development and strategic marketing communications for one of the fastest growing AmLaw 100 firms, advising at the firm, practice, and attorney levels across both business and consumer facing practices. As if that's not enough, Rose also holds an MBA in finance, which allows her to effectively connect data to strategy, ensuring that marketing efforts really drive results. And having that data aspect is so important. Rose, I've known you for a little while. I'm so excited to have you on. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
This is great. So, of course, I spied on your LinkedIn because we know each other, but
hmm
I realized that I didn't know that much about your past career. So, I saw that you've done different things,
hmm
fashion, marketing in various sectors, and of course,
hmm
entrepreneurship.
hmm
So, I always like to say that I fell over backwards into my career as a legal marketing professional.
hmm
Was it a similar experience for you, or was it more intentional than mine was?
Oh no, I fell over backwards. I did not
I feel like there are
intend.
probably a lot of us who did. That should
Oh
be another
yeah,
show, right?
it should totally be another show, and I would listen to that. You never intend for life. Is sort of what I say. I think if you overplan, the good stuff doesn't happen. And my career path has been very unintentional in a lot of ways and intentional in other ways. I ended up in legal marketing, not by choice, but by chance. I'm glad I did. But yeah, definitely has been a winding road to get here.
Yep, yep. And so I want to go to when you and I first met,
hmm
you had your own business, Crafted
Yep.
Identities.
hmm
What motivated you to launch it? Like how did you and you had been an employee, so how was that transition from employee to founder for you?
Yeah. So I always wanted to do my own thing and have my own business. I think it's
I never
something
did. I
really.
never thought I would. Oh my
Oh
goodness.
no, always wanted to do it. Always
What
wanted
made you
to do
go?
it. Had the bug. My family, my dad owned a clothing store growing up. My mom is an attorney, had her own practice, so I was always surrounded by entrepreneurs. And so I always knew I wanted to do that, and I always wanted to be able to chart my own path. And I kind of had the opportunity to take a step away from corporate and do that. And the timing was right. There wasn't like one specific thing that pushed me in that direction. It just sort of happened, and I'm glad it did.
Yeah, yeah. And now, of course, we're adding Chief Revenue Officer to your
hmm
accomplishments. How did this turn come about? Because I knew you before,
Yeah,
and I
yeah,
knew the ICVM half of
yeah,
ICVM Hawk, and then all
yeah,
of a sudden I see ICVM Hawk on your LinkedIn.
yeah, yeah.
What's going on?
I mean, another winding road. So ICVM Hawk is one of my clients. So I've done work with
I don't think
them.
I knew that piece.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Oh
yeah.
my goodness.
Yeah. So Tim is the CEO, and no, you know Tim. So Tim Hawks is the Hawk of ICVM Hawk. I met him through networking, and they were one of our clients. And so I've worked with them, a big chunk of my entrepreneur time helping their legal clients, because that's a big part of this company is law firms. And, aligned with my background and what I did and was able to help them that way. And so, Tim had been asking me to leave my entrepreneurship behind and come join them. And, several asks later, several coffees later, it just made more sense for me to work with them than stay on my own.
Yeah, yeah. And then how did you feel about winding down Crafted
Oh,
Identity?
it was a hard decision.
Yeah.
I'll be very honest, because it's one of those things where you want to be an entrepreneur, you want to have your own business, and you put yourself out there and you make these connections and you have these wonderful clients, and then to say, okay, well, now I'm going to go in-house again. It is kind of a mind shift, and you have to think about it. And I really had to reframe it for myself, because initially I was like, no, Thank you. Really appreciate the offer. I'm going to do this for me. And I did initially feel like I was giving up on myself in some ways. And I think some entrepreneurs feel that because it is you. Your business is personal to you.
Yeah.
But you know what has been wonderful about working with ICVM Hawk and the team is the people. And that was one of the things I realized that I missed as a solopreneur. And yes, you know, I had contractors and people that worked with me on specific projects, but I miss the people and I miss the team. And being social at work and the people around you, I think are really important. And they elevate you to do better. And when you can elevate them to do better too, it's a really great situation.
Yeah. Yeah. And how long has it been now that you've been there?
3, 4 months.
Wow. It
Not
feels
that
so much
long.
longer.
Yeah.
Why does it feel it
Maybe
feels
that's a
longer
good
to
thing.
me. I don't know about you, but it feels longer to
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. I think I started end of May, 1st of June. So right now we're in September. I know this will probably air later, but not that long.
Yeah, yeah. And what has that transition, going back
Mhm.
in-house where you're working with, I mean, you're still working with clients, you're working with
Yeah,
clients.
absolutely. Absolutely. So
Yeah,
it's
so
not night and day different. So I'm
yeah,
still working with clients. I'm still working with similar clients. The platform is just bigger. So I get to help clients in more ways. You know, I wasn't doing web development before, and we're doing web development now. And I worked with ICVM Hawk on SEO and content and social before. And so I get to do that now. I just get to
yeah,
do it with more people. And so really it's been good. And it's one of those funny things when you had been working with them as a client, I already knew what I was getting into. So
yeah.
it wasn't like, you know, first day, new job, drinking from the fire hose. It was actually a very easy transition.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
gotten questions from some clients
Yeah.
about, oh, would you consider coming in-house?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm
Mm-hmm.
always very flattered.
Absolutely.
And I with one firm I did think about it. And I figured, if I was going to do that, that it would have been with this particular firm. And then I decided, you know what?
Hmm.
I feel like I have a lot of runway left on this.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I
so
get
I
it.
decided not to. But it
I get
doesn't
it.
surprise me that Tim had to ask you several times, have several conversations.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, again, always very flattering, very appreciative, but you know, it got to the point where it just made more sense for me.
Yeah.
And it was, it's a great opportunity and I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. Well, I, for one, am it's worked out for me because now you're in a position where you can explain all of the stuff about AI optimization and stuff.
Okay.
We'll talk about that because I want
Yeah.
to talk about the webinar of yours that I attended recently. But let's go back to the law firm world in general.
Hmm.
Like just
Hmm.
framing that. We both come from that. We're both still
Yep.
in it.
Yep.
It's different from other marketing,
It
and
is. It is.
people hear marketing and they think, oh, it's like Coca-Cola or Budweiser or
Hmm.
something like that. And it's very different. So, and you of course spent years in-house at
Hmm.
Pulsanelli.
Yep.
What was that experience like at the start for you when it
Oh, it was so different. So different. So I was in consumer product marketing before I worked at a manufacturer. And it was a transition. And I remember telling my dad, I'm like, oh, I got this job at a law firm. And he's like, what do you mean you're going to market for a law firm? He's like, do you sit with a police scanner on your desk? I'm like, no, it's not that kind of law firm. It's not that the kind of marketing. And it was a shift, but I feel very fortunate for my time there because I was around some incredibly smart people in marketing, incredibly smart attorneys. I was afforded a lot of opportunity and I was able to bring a lot of what I did in consumer marketing to the firm because the way people buy, yes, it's different, but it's not night and day different. We still buy with emotion. We still validate our decisions online. We still want to know, like, and trust the person or the company that we're working with. Just the tactics are different. You're not selling a widget, you're selling a person and a service. And so, how do you make that person really come alive through the marketing? And how do you help them develop business in a way that resonates with who they are? And so, for me, I enjoyed it because there's so much personalness, for lack of a better term, in legal marketing.
yeah, I
I don't
never
know if you
thought
feel the
about it
same
that
way. Yeah.
I never thought about it that way. That it's I love. I mean, I've been doing this really. My
Yeah.
entire career has been spent in
Yeah.
law firms,
Uh-huh.
and I love talking to other people who have spent a long time in law firms because I always
Yeah.
get like a piece of their perspective, and
Hmm.
I like that one. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Um,
Thank you.
yeah.
I think it's really cool because it's a company made of people supported by the services that people do. And so there's a humanness to it, but people don't necessarily associate that with a law firm. And so
Yeah.
how do you make that personalness or peopleness come through, because oftentimes, whether you're a person or a business, when you're working with an attorney, it's a very intimate relationship. It's the sale of your business. It's a litigation that could make or break who you are. It's building your IP so that you can continue to grow. And so how do you kind of cultivate that in
Yeah.
your marketing and your messaging?
Yeah, and I also like to hear you talk about it that way because to me, the law it's such a mind-driven profession.
Mm-hmm.
So it can seem, to people so antiseptic and
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
um, sometimes cutthroat and like just
Mm-hmm.
and it is very personal.
Yeah.
Um, I like to think that I'm bringing that, I'm a very heart-driven person, so I like to think that I'm
Mm-hmm.
bringing more heart to this mind-driven
Mm-hmm.
profession. And when you are working with a firm, especially, now, if I'm
Yeah.
working with a firm, and same thing for you, if you're working with a smaller firm where,
Mm-hmm.
the founders are still there,
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
somebody who's recently taken over as managing partner is there,
Mm-hmm.
and it is very personal. Like
Very
the blood,
personal.
sweat,
Yeah.
and tears are in it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's what's cool is they do that for their clients too.
Yes, yes. Yeah, that is something that people often forget, when
Yeah.
you're in-house. You have to remember that everything that the lawyer is doing is about making their clients' lives easier, and you have to,
Right. Right.
you get to be part of that also.
Right.
So, how did that in-house time shape
Mm-hmm.
how you work with your law firm clients now?
Oh, that's a great question. I think it's pivotal to how I work with my clients now because I understand their day to day at a level that I don't think I would if I weren't in-house at a mid-sized large firm. When I was at Polsinelli, when I started, there were 300 attorneys. When I left, 1,000. And so it was insane. It was insane.
Wow.
Yeah. The growth at that firm was unbelievable during the time I was there. But because of that, I was afforded a tremendous amount of opportunity that I probably wouldn't have been if I was at a firm that didn't grow as fast.
Mhm.
So I understand what, 300 is more the mid-size typical level, and 1,000 is the giant firms. But I know what my clients deal with every day as an attorney. So when we work with more mid-sized firms, you're much more client facing with the attorneys themselves. For the larger firms or even the mid-sized firms that have marketing departments, I understand what their day-to-day life is. I understand what the pressures they face. I understand how they interact with the attorneys, the in-house push-pull. I understand the challenges with being kind of deemed a cost center in a business because that's how marketing is often looked at in a law firm, whether that's true or not. And so I can really relate to them on a personal level. Like I know what they're going through, and I've been through it myself. So we can come up with creative solutions that meet the needs of the marketing department and the firm.
Yeah, yeah. And that understanding both the lawyer perspective
Hmm.
and the legal
Hmm.
marketing professional perspective, I think is so key. And I love, it was years ago, I think that Jennifer Johnson coined the term revenue enabler rather
Yes.
than, yeah, yeah. And I
Yeah,
really,
and that's what it is. It's a revenue
yeah,
enabler. But it's still not billable. So you have to really
yes.
show your worth and how you enable that revenue. And so that's what we want to help our clients do with the data that we're able to provide from the services because it's important. It's important to show the attorneys how the team is enabling that revenue.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. When you come in I mean, you mentioned like, being there as a consultant, being in-house,
Hmm.
you've had
Hmm.
both
Yeah.
experiences, of course. Are there different roadblocks or obstacles when you come in as a consultant rather than being in-house?
I think sometimes you still have to prove your worth a little bit. You have to do that in-house as well when you start at a
Yeah.
new firm. But really being able to speak to the subject matter and speak to the team. I think often when you're brought in, you do have that level of credibility, but really listening is so important to everything I do, whether you're in-house or as a consultant. I think if you don't listen when you start and you just take action, you can fall on your face inadvertently because you don't really understand the whole perspective. And I wouldn't see that as a roadblock. I think that's a positive thing to do. But they're very different roles, but I think you use the same um, what's the word, toolkit, because even in-house legal marketing, in a lot of ways, you are a consultant. and you act as sort of the liaison sometimes in a mini agency
Hmm.
for the firm, depending on how the team's structured. Like from my experience, oftentimes the business development marketing manager is that account management role, and you act as the consultant between those that are in the creative or the martech or the marcom teams with the attorneys, and it's similar to an agency model.
Yeah, I remember you just reminded me when I was in-house,
Mhm.
I used to say, yeah, I am at a marketing agency. My
Yeah,
client, I just don't have to go out and get clients. My
right,
clients are
right.
here.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's totally true. And so I think the challenges or roadblocks that you face in both roles are very similar. It's just how you're able to overcome them and communicate with the client.
Yeah. Are you working with both mid-size and larger firms now?
Hmm. Hmm.
And that's a different animal also because
Hmm.
I mean, and you had that experience really in one firm that, I've
Hmm.
been
Yeah,
most of my in-house experience has been at large firms, even when,
yeah,
you know, going back to when, Hogan and Hartson, my first big law firm was a
yeah,
giant firm at 300 lawyers. Now we would
yeah.
consider that the large end of mid-size.
Right, right.
So very different, but
It's very different.
it is, yeah. So when you're working with, what is the experience, like how do you work differently with the clients, whether you're going into a
Mhm.
large firm or a mid-sized firm, or is there not really a difference?
In my mind, there's not really a difference because they still have the same problems. How we implement is different because a mid-sized firm may be able to be a little more agile, move a little bit faster, whereas a large firm, you have to get more buy-in oftentimes.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean how we help them is any different.
Yeah. So let's talk about AI search because this
Hmm.
is kind of like the hot topic and the bane of everyone's existence, right?
Yeah,
Or parts of it are.
yeah.
Actually, I see a lot of opportunity in it. I
There's
really
a lot of opportunity. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just attended this webinar, and again, this will probably air, later, but I recently attended a webinar that you and Tim hosted about optimizing for AI search.
Hmm.
And so I was originally going to ask you some questions about how you help your law firm clients
Hmm.
overcome feeling shadowed in a competitive marketplace. And
Hmm.
we can still talk about that, but in light of this very illuminating and helpful presentation, I want to talk about that more, especially since AI search now, as I've learned, mostly from your presentation, is so different from traditional search.
Yeah.
And the strategy for optimizing your results is really completely different. So, can you just give a mini synopsis of what you discussed on the webinar without scaring people?
Yeah, I'd love to. And I don't think it's scary. I think, like you said, it's an opportunity for people.
Yeah.
But it's so interesting how our behavior is changing because of AI. So people are going to ChatGPT, they're using the no-click search, it's with the Gemini at the top of Google to get information. And when they go to AI, they're being presented with opinion, essentially, from the chatbots that have gathered information about the firm or the question that's being asked, and it's given to you. So there's no longer people searching through website links to make this information and decisions on their own. They're taking the information that AI is giving them as fact. And so, how do we make sure that the information about a law firm, an attorney, a practice is correct and shows up so you're not invisible in AI search? Because what the data is showing us is by 2028, AI search is going to overtake traditional Google search, which is crazy
That's
because this
mind blowing.
only came about
Mind
like
blowing.
a couple years ago. It's mind blowing. The number of no-click searches on Gemini or on Google, excuse me, with Gemini is 60%. So 60% of the searches, we hit that little button for AI search or to expand, and you read the summary, and then that's it.
That's it.
I do it in my behavior, which
Yeah.
I know more and more people are, and more searches have the AI function built in now. So it's just crazy how that's happening. But what's so interesting to us is yes, AI search is built on the foundation of SEO, but there's so much more to it because it's interpreting the information on the web about the firm and serving it up, like we just talked about, as fact rather than
Yeah.
opinion. And so how do law firms and attorneys make sure that the information out there about them is accurate? And so it's, traditional backlinking. It's making sure your information is consistent, but it also has to do with your social media. It has to do with your PR. It has to do with your thought leadership and making sure all of that is consistent and ties back to your firm strategy. So if you want to be known as the tax firm, is your content talking about tax? Does it go deep? And that's what we call topical authority. And one
Yeah.
of the things that AI really looks for, and all of the tangential topics that support your breadth in tax practice, for example, if we're talking about that. It also looks at how you're talked about online. Do words like excellent, tax, service come up? And that's called co-occurrence. So how does AI see you in relation to other firms out there? And then it also looks at the authority signals. So I know this is painful to hear for many legal marketers, but
I know
things
what you're
like
going to say.
chambers, benchmark, best lawyers, they're all signals to AI that your firm is reputable because you have these rankings. And so how do you balance all of these with the resources on your marketing team to make sure that your firm's strategy, or its digital entity, as we call it, is in alignment so that you show up in search and you show up the way you want to in search?
So I have a question related to that.
Mm-hmm.
With regard to the ranking journals,
Mm-hmm.
ranking
Mm-hmm.
publications, does
Mm-hmm.
AI see all of them as equally authoritative?
Yes, and it's so interesting because when you'll do a search, especially between the platforms right now, they'll say XYZ firm is great in tax because their chamber's ranked, because they're listed here, because blah, 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 blah. And you'll do the same search again, and it'll say, oh, no, this firm is really the one you want to look at because they're the BTIA team and because this, that, and the other. And then you can do another search and it'll say, oh, it's because they have this many attorneys listed in best lawyers. And so I don't see one over the other right now taking over. I think they're all used and they're all used differently. And one thing that's really interesting about AI search that's different than SEO search is it's probabilistic. And so your answers for from ChatGPT, from Gemini, Perplexity, Claude, Grok, I mean, you name it, they could come back different every time
Yeah.
based on how the LLM has searched the internet and what it's come back with. And also semantics matter. And so if you ask a question with a slightly different one time versus the next, your answers may be different. Whereas in traditional SEO, it's probably going to be the same or
Yeah.
similar every time. There is some difference with traditional SEO, to be fair, based on location and search history, but it's very much more pronounced in AI.
So that's got to be really confusing then for law firms because, that it's hard to measure how you're doing if each time somebody's, like, how it is in law firms, you
Mhm.
get one partner a lot of times, it's
Yeah.
not unusual to have a fire drill because
Hmm.
one partner who's sitting someplace does a search and finds these
Yep.
results, and then a week
Right.
later as a search and is getting
Yeah.
different, completely different results.
Yep. No, absolutely. And we've taken that into account. So we have a proprietary tool that we use with law firms where we've connected with an API. So we're able to do unbiased polls. So we can do thousands of polls for a similar prompt so that we can be sure that on average, this is what we're seeing across all of the LLMs or the Gen AI, to be able to take that bias out. And so that it level sets for us, and you're not getting information that AI wants you to see because of what you've searched before. Because AI, funny enough, likes to flatter. And so if you are at the firm and it knows you're at the firm based on your IP address, it's going to give you a very positive view of the firm and searches when you look. But if someone else searches, it may be different. So that's why we use the tools we use to make sure that the results are unbiased and that we account for all of the variations.
I never thought about that AI
Isn't that
wants
funny?
but now I'm thinking about like my
Yeah.
results when I'm doing something, when I'm working with
Yeah.
Perplexity or ChatGPT, and it
Hmm.
says, that's a very good point. And I'm like, oh my God,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
It really looks.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. It's very funny. And the way that the LLMs are programmed, the large language models or
Yeah.
Gen AI, it's to think like humans in a lot of ways. And so when we engage with other people, we want to make people feel good and it wants
Yeah.
us to keep coming back. So it does that too.
That makes sense. So I see this as like this wave,
Hmm.
this change really. So
Yeah.
how you mentioned this, the tools that you're using.
Yeah.
How else are you helping your law firm clients like ride this wave in a way that they ride
Yeah.
it and they don't get knocked over?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We really partner with them and we do a research phase. So we use these tools that we have to understand how they're coming up and ranking for people searching for top law firms or top attorneys or top practices, whether it's nationally, globally, or in a specific geography. We help them look at sentiment. We can do comparisons against competitors to find gap analysis. So where are you performing well against your competitors? Where are your competitors performing better than you? And then we come up with a plan to help you figure out where the gaps are and how do we fill the gaps so that you rise above your competitors. And that could be with thought leadership, creating those topical authority areas. That's a really big one because how we write for AI is different than how we write for traditional SEO. Keywords don't matter as much for AI as they do for SEO. Traditional SEO looks at, your keywords and your H1 tags and, tying that back to search, whereas AI reads for meaning and value. And so is the content you're producing valuable? Does it say something that's going to be of benefit to the person? Keywords are still important, but not as important just because how it searches. And so we
Yeah.
help build out a content strategy and a content plan that makes sense for the firm in those areas. We'll also look at their communication strategy and their PR planning and their directories and their listings and where should they be focusing, what should they be talking about? Because oftentimes, I mean, you know this as well as I do in law firms, sometimes your PR isn't necessarily based on your strategy. It's based on potentially one partner that does a lot and wants a lot in
Yeah.
that area. And so how do you balance that with what you want to be known for and what you are known for?
Hmm.
And sometimes that's just messaging. It's as simple as that. And other times it's keeping, that partner happy, but ramping up in other areas.
Yeah. And for me, the opportunity, of course, is the whole idea is this something that legal marketing professionals have been talking about for
Hmm.
years now, if not
Hmm.
decades at this point, is that we have
Hmm.
to put out, it benefits the firm to put out
Yep.
authoritative content,
Yes.
have a
Yes.
content strategy. Don't just,
Hmm.
don't be random with it, really have a strategy.
Right. Right.
And so,
Right. And don't
yeah,
rely on the attorneys just writing it. And so how do you go
yes,
to them and provide that strategic value to your key practices and the tangential practices that support your key practices to build those topical authority areas out? Because oftentimes, I mean, I've seen that a lot and it's super common is we put out content because an attorney is interested in it and they send it to the marketing department, which
yeah,
there's nothing wrong with that. But I think as this landscape shifts and as people continue to go online and validate their legal buying decision, which they do, how do we be strategic and thoughtful about what's out there?
yeah, you have to make sure that whatever matters most to the firm, the things that the
Yeah,
firm wants to drive are the ones
right.
that AI search
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
SEO search. So it's not like in
Yeah.
2028, SEO search isn't going to just go away.
No, 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 no. It won't go
You still
away,
have to
but
do both.
absolutely, you still have to do both because there will be people that get information different ways or both ways. It's just the amount of people and how the proportion will flip flop.
Yeah. Yeah. So what are the benefits for law firms to start this early?
I think it's like anything. Start early, get results faster. Because right now, not as many firms or companies are looking at how they optimize for AI, but in about a year or two, more will. So at
Yeah.
this moment in time, the competition's not as high. And I think the sooner you start, the better positioned you will be for the long term.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that I mean it's a big change. Are you finding that
It's a big
when you're
change.
talking to your clients about this,
Hmm.
you just had this webinar, but when you're
Yeah.
talking to your clients about this, are you finding that especially among the mid-sized firms where they who can
Hmm.
be more nimble
Yep.
and move faster, are you finding that firms are getting on board and saying, yeah, you know what,
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, they are. We had one client call it marketing malpractice, not to look at AI search. And I thought that was a
wow.
really great term for it because, not to be dramatic, it is the wave of the future. And it is how people will be thinking and searching and gathering information, whether we want to believe that or we use it or not. And so, in some regard, it is marketing malpractice, not to future proof yourself, to ensure
Yes.
that the story that you want for you, your firm, the attorneys at your firm is being represented the way you want it to.
Yeah.
Because the more data that's out there about the firm, the harder it is to influence. And so if
Yes.
you start early and you start building that topical authority, the better you'll be longer term.
Yeah. Was that a marketing professional or a lawyer who
Yes, that was a marketing
I was
professional.
going to say, if that was a lawyer, that lawyer should have a second career in legal
Oh,
marketing.
I know, right? I know, I know, I know. But I thought that was a fantastic like turn of phrase for it.
Yeah, yeah, I really like that.
Hmm.
There's so much, I mean, I feel like there's so much more that we can go into on this, and I'm very curious about like how it develops. So, of course, I love
Hmm.
talking to you about any topic. So, I will definitely stay in touch and maybe you can come on again and talk about
Oh,
as
that'd be
it
great.
develops.
That'd be a
There's
lot of
going to be
fun.
so much
Yeah,
more. Yeah.
there's going to be so much more. We are just starting to see how this wave will be
Yeah.
ridden.
Yeah. And I know, like, my podcast is about unconventional career paths,
Hmm.
and that's certainly been your career path.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
this topic is, like this topic and what it's going to mean for law firms is
Hmm.
going to influence probably other people's career paths.
Oh, absolutely. It's going to influence how people write content at law firms, how we do PR at law firms. What does your strategy look like? I think there should be and will be a bigger emphasis on digital because of this.
Yeah.
And for some of the larger B2B firms, that hasn't always been the emphasis.
Yeah. Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how it
It'll be
unfolds.
very interesting. I'm excited though.
I'm excited too. I think that there is, it's scary and change is scary for
Hmm.
people and
Yep.
you don't want to always have to deal with it, but there are a lot of opportunities. It's
Hmm.
very nice to hear that it's, that having authority, that's something
Yeah.
that lawyers excel at is writing with
I
authority.
agreed. Agreed. They do. Yeah, they very much do.
Yeah, so it's refreshing.
Yeah.
Okay, so of course, I have my usual last question that I like to ask people. You've had an unusual career, so what
Yeah.
unexpected lessons or rewards have come to you from going around your own ladder rather than climbing a traditional one or climbing somebody else's ladder?
Yeah. Oh, that's a great question. I would say be open to opportunity and be open to saying yes, because sometimes that next step on the ladder you want to say yes to, and it's great. But sometimes you get an opportunity that's on a different ladder or a rung below or next to it or around it that is equally as good for you. And I think take the time and evaluate and do what's best for you, your life, your family. And don't be afraid to say yes because sometimes I think we are because like you just said, change is scary.
Yes, yes. And also, people come with these preconceived notions of like,
Yeah,
especially if you're saying, oh, well, I'm going backwards.
right, but
Maybe
you're
you're not.
not.
Maybe you're
Yeah,
backtracking to go in a different direction.
exactly, like you never know, and I think sometimes taking a step back actually gets you two steps forward.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm going to go with that. Thank you so much. This has flown
Thank
by.
you.
I knew
It
you would.
has.
I know, I know. Well, I really appreciate you coming on, and I hope that we can talk about this and other things again more.
Me too. Me
Thank
too. Thank
you.
you so much, Erica.
Great. So that is it for this episode of Around the Ladder. Remember, there's no one right way up, so take your detours, make your moves, and keep carving your own path. And if you enjoyed this episode, share it with a friend or a colleague who's on their own unconventional journey, or share it with somebody at a law firm that is thinking about optimizing for AI search. And I will see you next time. Thanks.